Story Time with Stephanie Storey.
Welcome to Story Time. I am your host, art historical novelist Stephanie Storey. And no matter how this conversation goes today, it's going to be fascinating because my guest is a novelist. His debut came out a year ago called Here and Now and Then. But his latest novel, his second novel, is A Beginning at the End, and it just came out in January. It is about the aftermath of a global pandemic, and it came out during a pandemic. My novel also came out during the pandemic, but it's an art book. So I get how hard it is. I can't decide whether or not having a global pandemic book come out in the global pandemic is the greatest coincidence in the world or the worst thing on the planet. So we're going to find out. Welcome to the show, Mike Chen.
Hello. It's both, actually. It's horrible and kind of cool at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, there's something sort of cosmic about it coming out right now, isn't there?
I had one of my writer friends, she thought I'd struck gold because she's like, you're writing about the aftermath of a pandemic while everyone's freaked out about this. This is fantastic for you. And I'm like, well, yes and no, because I actually had a lot of emails from and like tweets and other stuff from previous readers who really liked my first book. And they just said, I can't read it right now. I think we were hitting a wall of like, we're not quite sure what to do about this because people don't really know how to like juxtapose like reality and fiction right now. So it was really weird for like January and February. I found around March, I think when people started to do shelter in place and like the reality of everything kind of set in, there was like this sudden surge where people were like interested in movies and books and media about this. And then I got like this wave of publicity, like media interviews and like write-ups and lists and all this stuff. So it was like a second launch. It was really cool, kind of. And then I would get people messaging me after they read the book saying that because my book is very positive, that it really helped them through this time. So it's been very, very weird. It's like every possible feeling and reaction possible.
Your book is positive, hopeful. It does put it's a very human book. It's about human relationships as much as it is about the pandemic, but it does have a very positive spin. Now, I will say up front, I am only part of the way through it, so no spoilers, please.
Okay.
I am enjoying it very much, and I don't want you to ruin your own book for me. Okay, but it does seem like it's going to go in a positive, hopeful direction. What did you learn about writing about a pandemic that might be able to help all of us go in a more positive, hopeful direction once this is over?
When I first drafted this, it was 2011-ish. And the idea was really more about how do you recover from trauma and what is the value of like the people you surround yourself with. So like the notion that it would actually take, the world would be in a real pandemic, like that, like I thought everything I was writing was like a metaphor, so like metaphorically speaking, it's like, how do you, the original title of this was called The Pause when it was still in a manuscript stage, because the idea is the world doesn't necessarily end, it just pauses and resets. And with trauma, any type of trauma, like that's kind of what happens to you like on an emotional level, and you need to kind of push yourself through that with the proper support system, and that's how you can move on to like the next stage of your life. So that's where the whole idea came from, and the idea that to get through that, I am a big proponent of found family. And I talk about that a lot, and I've written some personal essays about that. That is one of the really big themes of this book. It's that the people you choose to surround yourself with will get you through it, no matter what it is.
How are you grappling with what you wrote in your fake version of this versus the reality you're currently living through? I guess it's
So it's interesting because I'd say like 2/3 of my book takes place like the present day timeline. There's a lot of flashbacks and interstitials and things like that, and about 2/3 of it takes place in like the 6 years ish after the pandemic, 2 years after a quarantine was actually finished and released. So there's a slightly different context. Like you do see, like there's a lot of talk about people wearing masks and using a ton of sanitizer. And one of the things that I thought was just a cute bit of world building, but now I'm starting to see it out in the world, is the idea that like when they go to Sunny, the 7-year-old in the book, like when they go to her school, and there's like, you know, like the cartoon posters and stuff they have where they teach you to wash your hands or whatever, like, or duck and cover, like that sort of stuff. And it's about like how do you like put on a mask. And for me, I just thought like, okay, well, this is a little touch of world building to show how people's priorities have shifted. And now like I'm seeing, you know, we've all seen like the cartoons and like the different ways to like get people to wash their hands. They had one, yeah, like in my daughter's preschool before it shut down. Like they had like a little thing of like, this is how you do it, like over, under, you know, all that stuff. So I was thinking, okay, that's, you know, at least my world building was accurate with that. I mean, the difference was like, I mean, the real world is a lot more slow rolling. Um, it's a lot more gradual, but one of the big differences in my book, the mortality rate is much higher.
Yes.
So we're seeing statistically your mortality rate is kind of like 2 to 4%, depending on different factors. And in my book, you're looking at more like 60 to 70%. And so because of that, in my book, like it goes from like, you know, rumored outbreaks to concern to like government organized, get people, like bust them into quarantine, scan them to make sure they're not infected, and stick them in a jail cell. Like it goes from that in like 4 to 6 months or so. I think there's more sheer panic in mine, because the mortality rate is higher, and then you're seeing like much more violence break out from it, as opposed to all of us just hanging out like on Zoom, you know, and still working too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. As opposed to this one feels like it's more boredom, which you wouldn't have written about as a
Yeah,
novelist, because what fiction writer would choose that? You wouldn't.
yeah, yeah. It's like, oh, my internet connection sucks, so I can't talk to my friends. There's not really a novel in
No.
that.
What got, because your first book is like time travel. This one's like
Hmm.
dystopian future worlds, you know, pandemic-y worlds. What got, so I would classify that, you can disagree with me, I would classify as that as like the sci-fi world, because it's
Yeah.
all got a little bit of not quite reality. What pulls you into that as far as storytelling goes? Why are you drawn to those kinds of stories?
Um, so I am a big sci-fi person. Like I've grown up with sci-fi. I mean, like you can see behind me, there's various sci-fi type things.
Uh-huh.
Um, so it's always been a part of me. But as a writer, like I've always felt like I don't think I have like the action chops to write like space opera or something like that, even though I really love it. And so when I started writing fiction, I really focused on like character stories. And I thought at the time, I think when I really wanted to try to move from like the short stories that I like took classes for in college to I'm going to try to write a novel. You know, like that, the sort of mentality. Like I stuck in contemporary because my critique partner and I were talking, and we're like, you know, this is where you're going to find family dramas. And then I actually had the idea for this book. This I just thought like, well, you know, what if I was getting frustrated with contemporary because I felt like I just wasn't feeling the groove for it. And I was talking with my critique partner, and I said like, what if I just took like the same thing and like stuck it in like the apocalypse or something like that. And then I was like, no, no agent's ever going to take that. And she said like, you should go for it. Why not? You know, like you'll probably be a better writer out of it, and who knows what's going to happen.
Music is a big important
Hmm.
part of this book. And I
Yes.
noticed on your website you talk about, you worked at Tower Records, and like you put
Hmm.
together a playlist for this book, and I do that too. A lot of writers put together playlists when they're writing novels. I have not figured out a way to explain to non-writers, to readers, what those playlists and what music does to me as a writer to help fuel me. Do you have an answer for how music helps fuel? I can't put it into the words. I don't know why.
So for me, like I've just kind of like reverse engineered my playlist into my characters. Like I didn't use it for drafting, but I talked to some writers, and they were telling me like how they put together playlists, and I thought that's a really good idea because the basic idea that I picked up on that I really liked is like a thematic song for the arc of a character, like or several songs, to kind of like establish like their internal mood, um, and then like for chapters or sections or scenes, um, a song to like establish the pace of that. So like maybe not lyrically the like the heart or themes of it, but to get like the real pace and atmosphere of the scene. And if the lyrics match up too, then that's great too.
Oh,
um but to get like a sense of like this is when it's got to turn, this is kind of like the boom 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 rhythm, or like the slow empty, like the music helps to satisfy that. And so I'm drafting my fourth book right now, and I want to try to experiment with that a little bit, um, to try to get a feel for it, because I thought that was a really cool technique. But for the playlist that I wrote for this one, um, it was more like seeing people talk about their playlists, and I'm like, oh, I have, when I hear these songs, I think, oh, that is who Krista is, or that is who Moira is. And so I just put it together for fun because I'm a big music nerd in my own right, and like I used to work at Tower Records and I played in bands and things like that.
so you studied engineering in undergraduate.
Hmm.
Did you
Yeah.
actually get an engineering degree?
Yeah, I started off like I was an engineer for I think 3 or 4 years, and then I pivoted into technical writing, which if for people that don't know, technical writing is like, all the documentation that goes with like for like support documentation, or like the how-to instructions, or like papers about like why this technology is good type of thing. So I shifted to technical writing. And at the time, I was freelance doing sports journalism too. Uh,
Hockey. My husband's
yeah.
a giant hockey fan. You wrote
Oh,
about
awesome.
NHL.
Yeah, I decided to, I guess, like retire from that around 2008, 2009 ish, because I was like, I've done everything that I wanted to do. Like I never sought out to be like a beat writer for a team or travel. I just wanted to like write about something that I really loved. I got press access, I interviewed players, it was really cool. And then it was like, okay, this is taking up a lot of time. I want to put that energy elsewhere now. But with the technical writing and the freelance writing, and I still do some freelance like journalism, but that's more for like geek media and sci-fi stuff right now. All of it helps with the book writing,
That's what I was going
because
to ask.
yeah, it's because especially with technical writing, like my boss now, so I've moved on to like marketing and project management, but I still do a lot of technical writing in my day job. um, I really didn't have much of an editor because everyone's kind of like pushing at a really fast pace, so you learn to self edit really fast. And the same thing with journalism, you have to learn to write a compelling story. If you look at most articles, if they're done right, they should basically have a 3 act structure, unless they're just doing a straight recap of a game. But if you're looking at like, this is a profile about this player, or this is like a look into the stats about this player, you want to have a 3 act structure for it to have a narrative. Otherwise, you're just like spouting out facts and it's kind of boring. So being able to see that structure on a journalism perspective, that helps a lot. And then combining that with the tech writing, where I'm like, I have to write as efficiently as possible, I have to be really clear, and I have to adapt my voice based on who I'm talking to. So if I'm writing for a consumer product, it's a much different voice than writing for like, this is going to a programmer because they need to learn how to code and interface with this product. Two very different voices. So all of this helps me adapt my writing voice to whatever the market suits. So I think it helps me be a better writer, and it helps me exercise the like the writing muscles that you need to be able to write very efficiently, which on an annual schedule with a young child and a day job, you have to be able to do.
Okay, but also My brother's an engineer. I'm a writer. We don't have a lot in common. You had to have had something at the core that connected those two pieces. Do you know what that is? Like what part of your brain connects those, the technical and the engineering with the creativity?
I think so. I've always, even though I've always been good at math, I've liked learning about how things work. But I've always been like very, I guess, art inclined. Like I almost went into like graphic design before I went into engineering. And I drew a lot and I wrote like fan fiction when I was young. And in college, I minored in theater. So I always wanted to kind of balance those two. And I played music my whole life. Like I started piano lessons when I was like 5. And I played in bands and like so I think if my approach to all of this, and I still do this now, when I think about songs that I like, I try to deconstruct it in my head about like, okay, why is this chorus resonate with me, but like this chorus for this popular song does not? And it's like little things like that, like we're like I actually will try to look at the underlying like why is this bass line cool but this one is not, and break it apart and put it back together. And I think that's really interesting from just figuring out how everything works. So from a writing perspective, it's funny, I was just telling my wife about this. Like I see writing as very number based because you have to pace things out, you have to balance your word count. You're basically working with 4 equal sections to make act 1, act 2A, 2B, 3. And you have to know how to like when to turn things in a scene. And if you made a chart with all of that, it would all be very balanced like on a mathematical level. So I kind of look at it as numbers. Like I'm trying to teach my daughter right now that everything is numbers. um it's like it makes it sound kind of cold, but it really is in a way. Like music is numbers, cooking is chemistry and timing and volume and things like that. So writing's the same way. Even self-editing, you want to make sure you don't use the same words too much or like the same sentence structure or things like that. It's all numbers. So that's my like technical brain is like fueling, it's like the engine that drives like the creative brain.
I love that. And I don't think it's too technical at all because that's how I feel. I
Mhm.
oftentimes feel like, well, no, it's so structured. It has to be
Yeah.
you've got to make it all work together. And I do feel like it's music, which is very numerical based. Okay. I could have this conversation for 5,000 years. I love the way your brain works. You're a brilliant guy. I'm thoroughly enjoying this book that I'm reading. Thank you for not spoiling it for me so I can enjoy the end. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to read the time travel one because I'm loving this one.
Awesome.
So, thank you so much for joining me today, Mike Chen. This was an awesome conversation. And I look forward to reading all of your books and enjoying them.
Once a year, at least for the next 2 years. So.
There you go. We'll look forward to it. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me. Good luck out there with all of this. And bye, everybody. I will see you next time.
Story
Drink
time
coffee.
with Stephanie Storey. Story time virtually. We've got time and plenty of stories, talking stories in a novel way. Story time with Stephanie.